next speaker is Dr. Wang, who is an assistant professor of civil, architectural, and environmental engineering at the Missouri University of Science and Technology. Professor Wang's research focuses on aerosol instrumentation and measurement, aerosol cloud interaction, and functional nanoparticle synthesis. Given the COVID-19 situation and the urgent need for medical masks, Professor Wang's research lab is now testing a wide range of household materials and common commercial fabrics that can be used to manufacture masks. This work has been disseminated through a publicly available spreadsheet and featured in local and online news articles. Dr. Wang received a BS in energy, environmental, and chemical engineering, and a PhD, both of which from the Washington University in St. Louis. Notably, in 2018, Professor Yang was recipient of the GAEF PhD Award by the European Association for Aerosol Research for his dissertation work. Please welcome Dr. Wang to discuss what information to share with people on mask-making materials.
So hello, everyone. During this talk, I'm going to share some information on mask-making materials. So first, I would like to thank the students in my group who have been working tirelessly to provide the data that are shown in this presentation. Next slide, please. So during the pandemic, due to the shortage of the medical PPE, for example, N95 respirators or surgical masks, people are always looking for the best material for their homemade masks. But before we identify these best materials, we need to first understand what are the criteria for a good mask. So FDA and CDC actually gave their recommendations on these criteria, and they include filtration efficiency, fluid resistance, flammability, and biocompatibility. So among these four, the top two are very important because the filtration efficiency determines how effective the mask is in removing the particles, and the fluid resistance determines how easy it is to breathe through the mask. And as for our homemade or DIY masks, we also need to make sure that they also satisfy these criteria, or at least the top two criteria. And here I have to mention that during the early stage of the pandemic, Missouri S&T teamed up with our local hospital, Phelps Health, and formed a joint task force to evaluate a wide range of household materials in their filtration efficiency or filtration performance. And I think this is a very good demonstration of how environmental engineers can help with our local community to alleviate the impact of this disease. Next slide, please. And in terms of evaluating the performance of these masks, they generally include two aspects. So the first aspect is on the material test, which means that we need to cut these materials into discs and fit them into the filter cassette, and we can evaluate its filtration performance. And the second aspect is the fit test, which means that we need to manufacture these materials into the entire mask and further evaluate its performance. And here I want to mention that the fit test is equally important as the material filtration testing, because the air leakage may also lead to the transmission of the disease. And we can use a wide range of aerosol instruments to conduct these measurements. Next slide, please. So the general method we can use is if we know the concentration of the aerosols upstream and downstream of the masks or the materials, then we can efficiency and also the filtration efficiency of these materials. And of course, the filtration efficiency is a strong function of particle size. For example, the N95 respirators are evaluated at a size of 0.3 micrometer. And as for the SARS-CoV-2 viruses, more and more evidence is showing that these viruses are actually carried by larger aerosols or droplets, for example, larger than 1 micron. Therefore, their filtration efficiency is strongly dependent on their different particle size. But in general, these efficiencies are positively correlated with each other. Next slide, please. And here it shows a list of fabric materials that we have tested in terms of their filtration performance. And I'm showing the filtration efficiency at 0.3 micrometer. And these fabric materials generally include cotton, wool, silk, polyester, and so on. So the general pattern we found from our result is that the denser fabrics will have higher filtration efficiencies. And in the fabric industry, people normally use the parameter called the grams per square meter, or the GSM, to describe how dense the fabrics are. And an easy way for us to tell how dense our mask is try to see whether we can see light through the fabrics. And if we can't see the light through, then it means that the fabric is not dense enough. So we have to stack multiple layers to boost up the filtration efficiency. But we also need to make sure that there's no air leakage. And we can test that by checking whether we will blink or whether there will be fog on our glasses when we exhale as hard as we can. Next slide, please. And among all the materials that we have tested, we found that the fibrous materials, which are generally the materials that contain electrolyte inside, have the best performance. And these materials generally include air filters, furnace filters, and so on. So for the figure on the left, it shows the material's filtration efficiency as a function of the fluid resistance. In general, the better materials would have a higher filtration efficiency and a lower flow resistance, which means that their data points should be on the lower right corner of this graph. And you can see that a lot of these better materials starts with the letter H in front of them, which means that they are housed air filters. So this result means that we can use these air filters as an insert for our fabric masks. But we also need to make sure that the air actually goes through the filter, and we do not recommend washing of these masks. So finally, just one slide before. So by the way, if you wear a face shield when you go to the classroom, please also make sure that you also wear a mask, because our study also found that when you walk around, the aerodynamics might work against you by entraining more particles into your inhalation zone. So next slide, please. So finally, I'm listing a few helpful publications, workshops, websites, and Twitter accounts to follow. And I think during this pandemic, you really have to appreciate a lot of environmental engineers who are actively sharing their research results and also their understanding of this disease. And specific for this talk, I want to thank Dr. Lindsay Marr and Dr. John Walkens, who provided their comments to these slides. So that's all for my presentation, and thank you all for your attention.